He was looking at me like I was his wife. That's how it all started. You won't believe what happened next, so listen carefully. But first, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button so you don't miss new stories. My name is Alina. I'm 35 years old. I live in a big house with always a ton of things to do, worries and conversations. From the outside, my life looks pretty normal. Work, household chores, family nights. But behind this regular routine hides something I've kept quiet about for a long time. Everything changed when he walked into the kitchen. It was like he just happened to, but his eyes said way too much. I felt that it wasn't just a simple look. He lingered longer than he should have, and the corner of his mouth twitched as if he wanted to say something but held back. "You look tired today," he said so calmly, as if he cared about me more than he was supposed to. In that moment, I suddenly noticed his words were hitting something deeper inside me than just simple gratitude. I tried to play it off, to answer lightly, "We all get tired." But my heart was already giving away my nervousness. I smiled, pretending his words didn't mean anything to me. But on the inside, everything fluttered, like someone had plucked a thin string. He came closer, put a grocery bag on the table and quietly said, "You take on too much." I tore my eyes away from the knife I was using to cut vegetables and met his gaze. There was something in them I had tried not to notice before. Too warm, too close. "You know I can handle it," I replied, trying to sound confident. "Maybe you can," he smirked. "But why do you have to do it all by yourself?" Those simple words sounded as if he could see right through me. I felt my fingers tremble slightly and quickly put the knife down. A silence hung in the room, and even the clock on the wall seemed to have stopped. He took a step closer, reached out his hand, and tucked a strand of hair that had fallen onto my face. "Alina!" He said my name so softly that a chill ran down my spine. I froze, not knowing how to respond. I wanted to say something easy, detached, but my voice betrayed me and trembled. "Don't look at me like that." He smirked, stepping back half a pace, but his eyes still didn't let me go. He stayed silent, and I felt the air in the kitchen get thick, as if you could cut it with a knife. I took a step to the side to grab a pot, but he beat me to it, grabbing the handle and putting it on the stove. His hand accidentally brushed mine, and from that simple touch my heart pounded against my ribs. "You're shaking again," he said quietly, not taking his eyes off me. "I'm just hot," I replied, trying to smile. He smirked and stepped back, but not for long. His gaze remained heavy, attentive, and I knew it was getting harder to hide my state. I intentionally busied myself with small tasks, opening a cabinet, getting out plates, rearranging spoons, even though I could have done it all in one move. "Alina," he called again, and I turned around. "What?" "You know I'm always here for you, and no matter what, I won't let you fall." I bit my lip because those words were more than just concern. There was a hint in them that made it even harder to breathe. He came closer and suddenly reached out. "You're holding too much inside. Someday it's going to burst." I couldn't take it anymore and quietly whispered, "Maybe it's really better to stay silent?" "No." He shook his head. "Sometimes you need to speak up, otherwise the truth will find its own way out." And in that moment I knew that one more step and we'd cross that line I was afraid to even think about. Later that evening we were alone. The house fell silent, with only the clock on the wall ticking away the minutes. I set the table, trying not to look at him, but I felt his gaze on my every move. He sat across from me, but soon he moved his chair closer, as if by accident. Now there were only a few inches between us. "You're barely eating," he noted, pushing the plate toward me. "I'm just not hungry," I answered, looking down. "Don't lie, Alina," he said softly. "You're all shaky, but you say everything is fine." I tried to laugh, but the laugh caught in my throat. He covered my hand with his and I didn't pull it away. Felt too natural. Too right in that second. "Are you afraid of me?" he asked, looking straight into my eyes. "I'm afraid of myself," I quietly confessed. He was silent for a long time and then he leaned closer. His voice became almost a whisper. "So it's already happened. You let yourself think about it." I looked away, but he gently turned my face toward him, and that gesture broke the last walls. In his eyes I saw not a prohibition but something warm, heavy, and dangerous. In that second I understood our fates were already intertwined, and there was no turning back. After dinner we moved to the living room. The lamplight seemed too bright, and he, as if he read my mind, turned the switch. Now the room was filled with only the soft glow of the fire from the fireplace. I sat on the couch trying to keep my hands to myself, but my heart was beating so hard it seemed he could hear it. He sat down next to me, not too close, but the distance between us still felt dangerous. We were silent for a while, listening to the crackling of the logs. You know, he began quietly, sometimes I think life throws challenges at us to test what we really want. And what is it you want? I asked, not looking at him. I want you to stop hiding your eyes, he said. I looked up, and in that moment his fingers touched my cheek. From that simple touch, everything inside me tightened and released at the same time. You shouldn't let me do this, I whispered, but I didn't move away myself. Do you want to move away? He asked. I didn't answer. He leaned in a little closer, and all that was left between our faces was hot air. We both knew that one more moment and everything would change. I could feel his breath. It touched my skin, and it felt like just a little more and I would lose control of myself. His eyes didn't let me go, as if pulling me closer, forcing me to forget everything that was supposed to hold me back. Are you scared? He whispered with his fingertips, lightly running them over my hand. I don't know, I answered too honestly. He smirked, but there was no mockery in that smirk, only tenderness. If you didn't know, you would have gotten up and left a long time ago, he said. My lips trembled in response, but the words never came out. I sat as if chained, and all that was left was to wait. He leaned in even closer, and I felt his lips almost touch mine. My heart was pounding so hard that I was afraid he would hear it louder than any words. Tell me to stop, he whispered again, but there was more of a plea in his voice than a command. I closed my eyes and quietly said, "Don't stop." And in that same second, the distance between us disappeared, and the whole world burned up in that kiss, so careful yet so full of power, as if we had both been waiting for it for too long. He held me tighter, as if he was afraid I would disappear. And in that embrace there was more truth than in any words. We sat on the edge of the couch, forgetting everything around us, the noise outside the window, the ticking of the clock, everything that could bring us back to reality. You know this is wrong? His voice was hoarse, as if he was trying to convince himself. I know, I whispered, burying my face in his shoulder, but I can't help it. He stroked my hair, and the gesture made it hurt even more, because it had everything in it. Tenderness, forbiddenness, and that line we had crossed a long time ago. I think about you all the time, he finally said, even when I try not to. And I looked up and saw a spark ignite in his eyes. I wait for your every move, your every look, as if I only live for that. We fell silent because words were no longer enough. Just breathing, just a heart beating in a single rhythm. And in that moment I knew our days would never be ordinary again. Every dinner, every chance meeting in the kitchen, every glance over the shoulder, all of it would be filled with a secret that only the two of us knew. The kitchen was quiet, only the kettle on the stove was starting to hum softly. I was slicing bread, trying not to pay attention to his footsteps behind me, but every step of his made me shiver. He came closer, his hand accidentally brushing mine as he reached for a cup. Careful, I said too quickly, as if I had startled myself. I'm always careful, he answered calmly, but a hint of a smile slipped into his voice. I felt him linger nearby, as if he didn't want to leave. A look at the window, my hand on the cutting board. His breath was right next to me, and it all looked so normal that no one would have noticed anything. But inside I was on fire. Are you doing this on purpose, being so close? I asked quietly, not turning around. What if I am? His voice was soft but had a challenge in it. Then I turned to him and met his eyes. You're playing with fire. Then we both are. He tilted his head slightly, And in his gaze was that same thing, that which we were afraid of, but to which we kept returning. The kettle whistled and I pulled away abruptly, as if the sound had brought us back to reality. I turned off the stove, set out the cups, but my hands were shaking and I knew he saw it. "We need to be stronger," I whispered, but I didn't believe the words myself. "I don't want to be stronger," he replied and walked away, leaving me alone in the middle of the kitchen with a heart boiling over. "The soup is hot," I said to clear the air. "I like hot things," he answered curtly, and I shivered at the hidden meaning in his words. Every time our hands accidentally met at the table, my heart would go into a crazy rhythm. His fingers slipped over mine as if by accident, but I knew it wasn't. "We shouldn't," I blurted out, almost in a whisper. "And who said I know how to listen to prohibitions?" He looked up and I drowned in his gaze. I pretended to be busy eating, but the spoon was trembling in my hands. His quiet laugh cut through the tension, but it only made it harder to breathe. It was as if he was testing how much I could handle. And suddenly he leaned in a little closer, not caring if anyone could hear. "You know yourself that it's too late to stop anything," he said quietly, but so firmly that it took my breath away. I couldn't find the words, only looked down, realizing he was right. I felt him slide his foot under the table, lightly touching mine. I flinched and the spoon fell into the plate, splashing soup. All eyes at the table immediately turned to me, and he, as if nothing had happened, calmly continued eating. "It's okay," I mumbled, hastily wiping my hands with a napkin. My heart was pounding so loud I was afraid everyone could hear it. He smiled slightly with the corner of his lips and quietly leaned toward me, as if he was about to ask something ordinary. "You're shaking," he said almost soundlessly, so no one but me could hear. "Stop," I whispered, but there was no confidence in my voice. And in that moment, someone in the family distracted everyone with a conversation. Voices rang out, and the tension seemed to melt away. But between us, a thin thread remained, invisible but strong. He looked at me with a long gaze, and I knew he was waiting for more. "I'll come to your room after dinner," he said curtly as everyone got up from the table. And he left first, leaving me with trembling hands and the feeling that there was no turning back. I closed the door behind me and barely had time to catch my breath before he walked in right after. His steps were confident but quiet, and my heart sank. He stopped very close so I could feel his warmth and said in a low voice, "I've been waiting for this moment all evening." I stepped back but hit the edge of the table. His palm rested on the wood next to my hand, and we were literally trapped in a cage of our gazes. "You shouldn't," I whispered, but the words sounded so weak that they seemed like a lie even to myself. He leaned in closer, and there was a challenge in his eyes. "Maybe I shouldn't, but I want to. And you know it." I squeezed my eyes shut for a second, realizing that all the strength of my resistance was leaking out with my breath. His fingers barely touched my cheek, and I felt everything inside me burn, as if from that one touch. "Are you scared?" he asked so softly that there was no pressure or command in it, only anticipation. "I'm scared," I confessed, opening my eyes. "But you stayed anyway." He smiled slightly, and his lips were dangerously close. The room became so quiet that I could only hear our breathing and the pounding of blood in my temples. He leaned in even closer, and I could feel his breath on my skin, warm and insistent, like the wind before a storm. His palm slowly slid from the edge of the table to my hand, intertwining his fingers with mine, and that simple gesture made me shiver. "You could have left, couldn't you?" he whispered almost right into my ear. "But you stayed." I swallowed, trying to find words, but everything inside had already decided for me. "Because I don't want to leave," I finally blurted out. His eyes sparkled, and he smiled as if he had been waiting for exactly that answer. He gently ran his fingers over my cheek, then my neck, and each of his light touches left a trail of fire. "So you admit that you need this too?" he said quietly but confidently. I didn't answer. My silence and my gaze were more eloquent than any words. He slowly leaned in and our lips met. At first, carefully, as if we were both afraid to ruin the moment, and then with an increasing hunger, as if a dam had broken inside us. The world around us disappeared. There was only us. This room and the force that pulled us toward each other stronger than any prohibitions. His lips became bolder, and his hands confidently found their way to my waist. I felt him pull me closer, as if he was afraid to let me go, and that force made me weaker and stronger at the same time. His every touch resonated within me with 1,000 sparks, making my heart beat faster. "You know it's hard for me to hold back," he breathed out, not pulling away from my face. "And who said you should hold back?" I answered quietly, surprised by my own words. There was no air left between us, only heat and the feeling that we had crossed a boundary from which there would be no return. His fingers slid down my back, and it felt like all of reality had shrunk to this moment, to his eyes, which burned with desire, and to my own breath, which was caught by emotions that were too strong. "You know there's no going back now?" he said a little more roughly, almost growling, but there was something captivating about it. I nodded and closed my eyes, allowing myself to dissolve in this moment, because this was exactly what I had been waiting for all this time. His breath became hotter, burning my skin, and his hands no longer hesitated. Every line of my body seemed to have been memorized by him. I felt him pull me closer, and in that moment the world ceased to exist. There was only the two of us. "You're driving me crazy," he whispered, leaning toward my ear. And those words sent shivers down my spine. "Maybe that's why I'm here," I replied, not knowing where I got such boldness. He smirked, but in his gaze was not only passion, but also a kind of tenderness, dangerous and sweet at the same time. His fingers slid over my wrist, lingered there, as if he was afraid I would disappear if he let go. "You have no idea how long I've been waiting for this," he said, and there was more truth in his voice than I could handle. I closed my eyes, letting him take the last remnants of my doubts, and in that second, I felt that I no longer could or wanted to resist. Everything I wanted was right in front of me. His palm rested on my waist, and I felt a wave of warmth run through my body, as if his very presence ignited a fire inside. I wanted to say something, but the words got stuck in my throat, and instead a quiet sigh escaped. "Are you shaking?" he whispered, pressing me closer. "It's your fault," I answered barely audibly, and my lips themselves touched his cheek, as if they were drawn to a place that was both safe and dangerous at the same time. He froze, as if wanting to remember this moment, and then his lips slid to mine, carefully but insistently. My heart was pounding so loud that I was afraid it would give me away, but he only pulled me closer, as if we had always belonged to each other. "You have no idea how much I've dreamed of you," he said, and his voice cracked. I looked into his eyes and knew that I had already crossed that line from which there is no return. Everything that was happening was forbidden, risky, but at the same time the most right thing for my heart. His breath was hot and close. It burned my skin, and I didn't know whether to pull away or let it happen. His fingers slowly slid down my back, as if he was afraid to scare me away. "Don't go," he whispered almost desperately, and there was so much sincerity in his voice that I couldn't stop the trembling. "What if we're seen?" My voice was shaking, but I myself was not taking a single step back. He pressed me closer, leaning in. "Let the whole world see. The important thing is that we're together." Those words broke my resistance. I felt something inside me give way. Our lips met, first softly like a test, and then more and more intensely. I could hear my heart beating wildly, and every one of his kisses became a confession that was impossible to turn away from. "You're mine," he breathed out between kisses. I closed my eyes, allowing this moment to completely take me over, because this was exactly what I had been afraid of for so long and at the same time, what I had been waiting for. His hands held me tightly around the waist, and I felt him tremble a little, as if he himself was fighting the desire that was about to burst out. "You don't understand," I whispered, trying to hold on to a shred of sanity. "This is wrong." He leaned in close to my ear. His voice was hoarse and low. "What's wrong is living by pretending there's nothing there. But this." His lips touched my neck and I almost lost my breath. This is the only thing that's real. I pressed my palm to his chest, feeling how fast and hard his heart was beating. We both knew we had gone too far, but neither he nor I wanted to stop. "You're going to drive me crazy," I blurted out, and he, smiling with the corner of his lips, whispered, "Already have." Our eyes met again, and in that look, there were no more doubts, no more prohibitions, only desire and the promise that everything we had been hiding would now become a reality. I barely had time to push him away when I heard footsteps behind the door. My heart sank. If someone walked in right now, everything would be revealed. He pressed a finger firmly to my lips. His eyes flashed. "Quiet." We froze, not breathing, hearing someone slowly walk by in the hallway. I could feel his palm still on my waist, and that touch felt like it was throwing me into a fire. "See," he whispered when the footsteps faded. Fate itself is playing with us. We could have been caught. I pulled away for a second, but his gaze held me stronger than any hands. What if this happens again? My voice was shaking. There was both desire and fear in it. He came closer again, his breath burning me. "Then we'll learn to be more careful, but I won't let you go, you understand?" "Never." In that moment I realized it was already too late to go back. Everything that had been hidden between us had burst out, and the tension and the sweet risk only made it stronger. He leaned toward me again. His palm slid down my back, as if checking if I was shaking out of fear or out of desire. I tried to step back, but the walls of the room seemed to close in, leaving us no escape. "You want this too, don't you?" he whispered almost right into my ear, and his voice took my breath away. I looked at the door, afraid that the handle would turn again, and yet I allowed him to come closer. His lips touched mine briefly, hungrily, and I pressed against him harder myself, forgetting everything else. "We'll go crazy if we keep this up," I breathed out, but my fingers were still gripping his shirt. "Then we'll go crazy together," he replied, not letting me go for a moment. Every sound in the house resonated in us like a blow: footsteps, creaking floorboards, even the quiet ticking of the clock. But it was that very danger that made everything sharper, turning every second into a crazy temptation. I barely had time to pull away when I heard footsteps outside the door. My heart hit my ribs so hard I thought the whole house would hear it. He instantly let me go, pretending he had just handed me a cup of tea, and at that exact moment the handle turned. My mother-in-law peeked into the room. "Is everything okay?" she asked suspiciously. Her gaze slid from me to him. "Yes," he answered calmly. "I was just helping out." She dropped her spoon. I nodded, even though my lips were still burning from his kiss. My mother-in-law held her gaze on us but didn't say anything, closing the door. I breathed out as if I had just finished a marathon and looked at him. He was smiling his cheeky smile, which held both a challenge and a promise. "See," he said quietly, "we know how to get out of things." I wanted to scold him, but instead I laughed and, unable to hold back, pressed myself against him again. We had gone too far to stop now anyway. He got up first, as if nothing had happened, straightened his shirt, and calmly walked toward the window. I was still standing there, unable to stop shaking, whether from fear or from desire. Footsteps were heard behind the wall again, and I instinctively grabbed his hand. "What if we get caught?" I whispered. He turned and, looking straight into my eyes, said, "I'd rather be caught than let you go." These words sounded so serious that I got even more scared. I stepped back, feeling the line between forbiddenness and a real feeling melting away. We didn't dare to do anything more that evening, but only one thought was spinning in my head. What if he comes back tomorrow? I sat on the bed trying to calm my breathing, and he was still standing at the window, as if deciding something inside himself. The silence in the house was unnatural. Even the clock on the wall seemed to tick louder than usual. He suddenly turned sharply to me and quietly said, "Tomorrow when everyone leaves, I'll come back." My mouth went dry, my heart beat faster, and I couldn't find the strength in me to say yes or no. He looked at me so confidently, as if the answer had already been given. I looked away, but inside, Everything was burning with anticipation, with fear, with desire. And as a new day began outside the window, I already knew the past couldn't be undone, and ahead of us was something more than just a game. He came back again just as he promised. The house was quiet that day. My husband had left on business. The kids were at a friend's house. I heard the door creak, and my heart immediately jumped into my throat. He walked in confidently, as if he were the master of this moment. "Were you waiting for me?" he asked quietly, sitting down next to me. I didn't answer with words, but my gaze said everything. He ran his hand over my cheek, lingered, as if checking if I was trembling. I pulled away for a second, but his voice reached me. "Don't be afraid, I won't do anything you don't want yourself." And in that moment, the tension that had been building inside me all these days snapped like a thin thread. We sat next to each other, and the air between us was thicker than any walls. I could hear his every breath, feel the warmth of his body, and I knew our meetings were becoming inevitable. "You know there's no going back now, right?" His words sounded like a warning but also like a promise at the same time. I nodded, and that evening, he stayed longer than my conscience would have allowed for the first time. We drank tea in the kitchen, talked about the most ordinary things, about movies, about work, about life. But every glance, every hint in our words created a special atmosphere, as if much more was hidden behind our simple conversations. His hands wrapped around me tighter, as if he was afraid to let go for a second, and I myself was no longer looking for a way out. Something new, forbidden, and sweet was burning in my chest, making my heart beat faster. I could feel his breath on my lips, and in that moment the whole house seemed to disappear. There was only the two of us, and I knew this would be our secret, our dangerous passion that began with a single look and would never let go of either him or me.